and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. And after he dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. And then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." So just for a few minutes this morning, I have a few scattered thoughts on the topic, the boldness to move forward. And that is the new key I want to give us this morning. Boldness to move forward. So here at this story happens after that iconic feeding of the 5,000. Jesus takes the 2 fish, the loaves of bread, and feeds the multitude of 5,000. He's exhausted, and he's supposed to go across the Sea of Galilee with his disciples. But Jesus decided to stay back and pray and be alone on the mountainside. So he sent his disciples onto the boat to carry on to the other side. And around the fourth watch of the night, which is about 3 to 6 o'clock in the morning, a huge storm came upon the Sea of Galilee and started buffeting the boat, and the boat was going to sink. And then Jesus came out like a phantom in the night, walking on the water, and said, "Come," to Peter. Peter was the only one on this boat who saw himself in this horrible situation. He saw the solution, and he took the risk of stepping out of the boat to go toward Jesus. And so the first boldness key I'm going to give us this morning can be found in verse 29, where Jesus says to Peter, come away from this sinking boat." And it said Peter got down out of the boat. So the first boldness key that I want to give you guys this morning is the boldness to leave sinking situations. There's a guy who went shoe shopping, and he asked the sales clerk for an 8.5. And the clerk clearly saw that the guy was easily an 11, but he brought the 8.5 to the guy. And he saw the guy struggle to put on the shoes, and the shoe salesman goes, "Brother, you can't wear those." He goes, "Your feet are going to be tore up if you wear these shoes." And the guy goes, "I hate my life, I hate my wife, I hate my job, and the only thing I look forward to every day is taking off these shoes." How sad that a lot of us are in situations that are depressing. A lot of us are in situations that are unfulfilling, but yet we still remain in those situations. Here we need to be like Peter, to have the courage to leave a sinking situation. So when we leave these sinking situations, we need to get new nouns in our lives. What are nouns? People, places, and things. And so I want to first of all encourage you to leave sinking people. I fly a lot for my job, and one day I was flying from Dallas to Las Vegas, but we had a connection through Denver. And when we got to Denver, the flight attendant gets on the intercom and says, "Those of you who are traveling to Vegas, we need for you to make room for the people getting off in Denver to get their baggage and leave the plane." I thought, that could preach. In order to leave sinking people, we need to do what that flight attendant said. Make room for some people to get off your plane, take their baggage, and leave. Stop holding on to people who are bringing you down. There was a Bishop G. Patterson from the Temple of Deliverance Church in Memphis preached a similar sermon, and a woman went home and put out her husband. And the next morning, the husband came to the church and shot him. Oh. So if you are interpreting this as going home and putting out your spouse, make sure I'm good and gone out of Los Angeles before interpreting this way. But we need to have the courage to leave sinking people. We also need the courage to leave sinking places. Because where you are is just as important as who you are and what you are. And when you are in your place of destiny, when you are in the right place for your life, your genius emerges. Mm-hmm. We grew up in East Texas, and we had a stock pond. And I remember when we were stocking the pond one day, they bring the fish to the edge of the pond, sit the fish at the edge of the pond, and then you throw them in. But when you see the fish sitting on the surface, you think, man, fish are stupid. They can't talk, they can't fly, they can't do anything. But as soon as you drop the fish in the water, its genius emerges. It's almost majestic to watch a fish swim. Some of us, we are a fish out of water, and we need to find the place where we belong. How do you find that place? You have to go where you are celebrated and not tolerated. And when you find that place where you are celebrated and not merely tolerated, you are at your place of destiny. So it behooves us to consider, are we at the right place? Are we where we belong? Are we at a place where our genius is being exposed and emerged? Third thing, we need to leave seeking people. We need to leave seeking places, but we also need to leave seeking things. Last October, I was in Dallas in the middle of a restaurant and had a stroke. I went to the hospital and we went through the procedures to get it corrected. And the doctor told me, he goes, Chris, you're gonna have to stop drinking, you have to stop going out, you have to start going to bed early. And when my brother got to the hospital, he said, what did the doctor say? He said, I think the doctor says I'm going to die. Just couldn't give up those things. But I had to have a complete lifestyle change in order to live my life and live it more abundantly. We need to give up certain things in our lives. There's certain habits, there's certain hobbies, there's certain patterns that are sinking us down. So first, I encourage us to have, like Peter, the boldness to leave seeking situations, to leave seeking people, to leave seeking places, and to leave seeking things. Second, let's go back to the scripture. It says in verse 29, let's move to 30. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink, cried out. This is a sad part of the story. Here Peter walks out on the water. He leaves his sinking situation. He steps foot on water, and physics tell us that we are to sink. But Peter gets out of the boat and begins to walk on water. Pretty remarkable, huh? Men do not walk on water. It's just not capable for us to do so. But Peter was doing it. And when Peter, instead of him looking at this remarkable feat that he's doing, instead he focused on the winds and the waves around him. So, our second boldness key. The first one, the boldness to leave seeking situations. The second one is the boldness to accept that you are capable of doing remarkable things. Some of us are bewildered when we put in our best efforts and then we get our best results. We think something must be wrong here. I would go out. I was young when I moved to Las Vegas. I would press my pants, comb my hair, put on a nice shirt, go out to meet girls. And then when I found a girl who was responsive to me, I was like, what? She must be crazy. Was not able to accept that I was capable of doing remarkable things. About a year ago, LeBron James scored 48 points on the Pistons, and a sports writer asked him, he goes, were you surprised? And LeBron James said, why should I be surprised? Because LeBron James was comfortable with knowing that he is capable of doing remarkable things. We need to get comfortable with cultivating an environment of excellence around us. Not looking at the haters, not looking at the people who say you can't do this, not looking at the people who say, oh, you're too stupid, you're too dumb, you're not smart enough, you're not tall enough. You are capable of doing remarkable things. And when you are doing your remarkable thing, the only competitor you have is yourself. Look, no one said that the waves knocked Peter down. No one said that the wind sunk Peter. Peter's lack of focus and his lack of acknowledging that he was doing a remarkable thing is what brought him down. So do not be bewildered or befuddled by your best results. When I was a kid, we used to have this thing called track and field day. And on track and field day, you race other people in your class. And the class with the most points get rewards. And you practice for 3 weeks. And so my particular race was the 100-yard dash. And they had me in a specific heat that I lost every time at the practice. I was like, man, I'm gonna look stupid on track and field day. So my brother started working with me to help me get my speed and my coordination down. And then on the day of track and field day, I'm at the line, the starter shoots the gun, and boom, we take off. And what do you know? My best results, my best efforts were getting my best results. I was in first place. Couldn't believe it. I'm running hard, sweating hard, and I'm like, I'm in first place. And what did I do? So I looked to my right to see if anybody was gaining on me. I looked to my left, nobody was gaining on me. My best effort were getting my best results. I looked around again, nobody, wow, am I this fast? Looked around, and then when I looked around this way, something happened and my feet got tangled up. And I tripped and fell. Lost the race, still got third. But lost the race because I was more worried about my competition than I was accepting the fact that I was doing a remarkable thing. We have to get comfortable with the notion that you are capable of awesomeness. Third, so we have the boldness to leave sinking situations. We have the boldness to accept that we are capable of doing remarkable and amazing things. And the third thing, which is probably the most crucial, the boldness to reach for help. Let's go back to verse 30. But when Peter saw the winds, he was afraid, he began to sink, and he cried out, what? Lord, save me. Our third boldness key is the boldness to reach for help. In an ancient world, off the boot of Italy, was the Strait of Messina. It was a narrow stretch of water that connected the Ionian Sea and the Tiberian Sea. And sailors all around knew about the Strait of Messina because on the right side of the entrance of the strait was a whirlpool. And on the right side of the entrance of the strait lied a huge rock. And sailors all around knew that if you go too far left, your boat got into the whirlpool and would sink. They knew if you get too far right, you would hit the rock, it would crash your boat, and you would sink. And sailors all around the world knew the Strait of Messina. is where we literally get the term stuck between a rock and a hard place. They knew that narrowing the go through the Strait of Messina was a harrowing task. You had to be focused. And so God allows himself to be found at the intersection of Rock Avenue and Hard Place Boulevard. That is where he allows himself to be found. In the Straits of Messina, Dr. Edward Douglas says, he allows himself to be found when life is in the straits. In my own personal testimony, after my father passed, I walked away from one of the most prestigious graduate schools in this country. I went from being somebody to nobody, being taught by some of the world's greatest professors, to watching Judge Judy on my brother's couch. But it was at this moment, at this time of darkness, at this time that I was at Rock Boulevard and Hard Place Avenue, that God allowed me to find him. And that is the message of this. When Peter cried, help, what does the scripture say Christ did? It said immediately Christ reached his hand to save Peter. And so for the first boldness to reach for help, you must first seek help from the right people. Stop getting constructive criticism to people who've never constructed anything. Stop getting relationship advice for people who can't keep a relationship. Stop getting career advice from people who can't keep a job. You must first seek help from the right people. I grew up with my grandmother. My brother and I grew up with my grandmother, and we had a first cousin, his name was Art, who would come and visit us during the summertime. And one day, we were having a dispute, a disagreement, if you will, over French fry distribution. We just got home from McDonald's, and I felt that my brother took more than his share. I confronted him about it, and he slapped me. I ran out of the room. My cousin Art comes up to me and goes, Chris, this has to end today. He said, your brother's a bully. You got to stop him. He goes, so what I want you to do is I want you to go back in that room and slap him back in the face. And he goes, when you slap him and he starts getting the better of you, I'm going to jump in. I said, okay. We had a plan. I walked into the room, opened the door, had the swagger of a John Wayne, walked right up to my brother and slapped him in the face. After that, there were 3 more hits. My brother hitting my face, me hitting the floor, and my cousin Art hitting the door. Stop relying on help from people who can't even help themselves. You have to seek help from the right people. Second of all, you have to seek help from the right place. I told you about that Scylla and Charybdis, the whirlpool and the rock, narrowing and trying to get through the straits. That's where God allows himself to be found. He is in the midst of your storms. He is in the midst of your winds. He is in the midst of the hardest times in your life. He is there waiting for you to cry out, Lord, save me. He does not hesitate. He reaches forth his hand to help his child. He doesn't come during the first watch of the night. The ancients divided the nights into 4 watches. The first watch was 9 to 12. The first watch was 6 to 9. Second watch, 9 to 12. Third watch, 12 to 3. Last watch, the fourth watch, was 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. What is the hardest part of the night? The fourth watch of the night. When every piece of your being cries out for sleep. When the lactic acid builds up and say, get some rest. It is in those moments, it is in the fourth watch of the night scenarios that God allows himself to be found. And so, seek help from the right place. And we also have to seek help from the right position. What do I mean by that? Watchmen mean that self-taught anti-didactic Chinese Christian of the 20th century, wrote a little book called The Normal Christian Life. And in this book, he tells of a story of he and his fellow Chinese brothers in Christ went down to their favorite swimming hole to swim. There was only one good swimmer out of this group of about 10, and one of the weak swimmers began to drown. And when he was drowning, everyone looked up at the good swimmer to jump down and save him. But the good swimmer would just sit there, perched on the rock, looking down at the brother struggling. The poor swimmer went down once. Save him, they cried out to the good swimmer. The good swimmer didn't budge, just sat looking. The weak swimmer went down again. Save him, they cried out to the good swimmer. The good swimmer did nothing. The guy went down for the third time. They said, why won't you save him? And then all of a sudden, the good swimmer jumps down from his rock and with a few swift swimmer strokes, got to that drowning brother, pulled him to the shore. And after things had got settled, Watchman Nee said he went to that good swimmer with hate in his heart and said, why did you not save that brother when he was drowning? The good swimmer said, look, had I jumped in when he first went in, he was thrashing the water so hard that had I jumped in then, he was so rigid and afraid that he would have taken us both down. The good swimmer said, I had to wait until he went limp. I had to wait until he got weak for me to jump in and save him. And that is the story of our lives. Some of us, we are not too weak to be useful. We're too strong to be useful. We're too prideful to be useful. And God is waiting for you to go limp, and that is when he becomes your Lord. He is waiting for you to say, Lord, I need help. He waits, and he waits until you are weak and humble enough, and that is when he comes in and saves you. It's the fourth watch of the night situation. So seek help from the right people. Seek help from the right places. And seek help from the right position. I almost choked to death in an IHOP once. I was choking on roast beef. I was too prideful to interrupt people's pancake dinners to say I needed help. I would have rather died in IHOP than to seek out for help. Seek help from the right position. Seek help from the right place, and seek help from the right people. I'll close with a story of this elementary school teacher who was going around her class as her children were drawing photos. She stopped at one girl and she said, what are you drawing? The little girl said, I'm drawing God. And the teacher goes, no one knows what God looks like, dear. And the little girl goes, they will in a minute. What is your portrait of God? Are you drawing God as big? Are you drawing him as powerful? Are you drawing him in your life as invisible? When people look at your portrait of your God, is he weak? Is he small? Is he irrelevant? How you create your God in your life determines the boldness that you will have to move forward. It is time for us to stop telling God how big our problems are, and we need to start telling our problems just how big our God is. And that is why in Hebrews 4th chapter 16th verse, it says, let us now come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Go boldly, live boldly, act boldly, think boldly, and move forward. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for your wisdom and your guidance. We thank you for the ability to help us when we need you most. And Lord, I pray for this, myself and this congregation, that when we are in the straits of our lives, we are navigating those tough parts of our lives, that we have the boldness, we have the courage to leave our sinking situations. We have the boldness to realize that we are capable of doing remarkable things, and that we are bold enough to ask and seek your help. Lord, continue to guide us. Thank you for second chances through Christ.
Amen.
You have to stay seated or stand.